I'm Charlotte Morgan, 33, the forgotten one, always the quiet shadow next to my sister Victoria Blake, celebrity designer, socialite, and the family's chosen star. At our parents' 40th anniversary party in Austin, she played her role perfectly, floating through guests in a sequined gown, drink in hand, smile wide and sharp. And me? I was there in muted colors and quiet posture, trying not to flinch every time someone asked if I was still with the army, doing tech stuff or whatever. The night was as predictable as ever, golden lighting, champagne flutes, and backhanded compliments. I stood by the drink table, gripping a glass of water, letting their laughter about computer soldiers wash over me. I've spent 10 years in cyber intelligence, recently promoted to major. But to them, I was still just the weird girl who joined the army instead of starting a brand. And then Victoria, in full performance mode, raised her glass. "To family," she announced, voice ringing with poise. "To love, legacy, and to making real impact in the world." Her eyes flicked to me for just a second, smirk already curling. "Charlotte's here too," she added, laughing lightly. "Our very own behind-the-scenes hero, doing important files." Some guests chuckled. I clenched my jaw. I told myself I wouldn't let it get to me. Not this time. I was stronger now. I'd been part of classified operations that altered the course of conflicts. My hands had typed lines of code that stopped cyber attacks targeting entire cities. But none of that mattered here. Not in the room where I was still Charlotte, the second best daughter. Then, the doorbell rang. Victoria blinked, annoyed. "Who's that? Everyone's already here." Brian, her husband, started toward the door. "Probably a neighbor with a noise complaint," he joked. But when he opened it, he froze. A second later, I saw him, Elijah Blake, my nephew, Victoria's 25-year-old son. His presence filled the doorway in crisp Air Force dress blues, cap in hand, posture solid. Every voice fell silent. Every fork paused mid-air. Elijah's eyes scanned the room, then landed on me. He strode in, strong and deliberate. Then, he snapped a salute. "Major Morgan," he said, voice steady and formal. "Lieutenant Blake, reporting as directed." A beat of stunned silence. You could hear a wine glass set down too hard. Victoria's jaw dropped. Dad stood up slowly, bewildered. My stepmother, Claire, whispered, "Major?" like she'd misheard. But Elijah didn't waver. "My CO instructed me to deliver intel personally. Your work from Operation Silent Prism saved 3 crews, ma'am. We're in your debt." It was the first time in my life that this room looked at me, really looked at me. And if you've ever been laughed at by your own family, you'll understand exactly why that moment changed everything. Growing up in Austin felt like living on the set of someone else's success story. Our house sat on a quiet street lined with trimmed hedges and matching mailboxes. Picture perfect. But inside, it was always clear whose name would end up in lights. Victoria Blake, my older sister. 10 years ahead of me, 10 times louder, and always 10 steps in front. She was born when Dad was barely 20, just getting his start in architecture. By the time I came along, our mother had passed. Car accident, quick and brutal. I never got to know her. Claire came into the picture when I was 2. She married Dad and stepped smoothly into the role of mother. Only, she already had a favorite. Victoria. Claire adored her from the start. She brushed her long hair every morning, packed her special lunches, showed up to every recital with a homemade sign. Me! I got pats on the back and leftover attention. Victoria was the queen bee. Debate team captain, yearbook editor, prom queen with a 4.0 GPA. Her trophies lined the mantel. Her school photos filled the hallway. I once brought home a regional math trophy, first place. I was so proud I nearly sprinted from the school bus. Claire glanced at it over the rim of her tea mug and said, "That's nice, Charlotte," before launching into praise about Victoria's latest magazine feature. Dad was no better. Half the time, he didn't hear me at all. He was always hunched over blueprints in his study, murmuring about clean lines and materials. When Victoria spoke, though, he lit up. The only time I saw their attention shift was when I built a homemade encryption model in 10th grade for a science fair, and the local news showed up. Even then, Victoria scoffed. Cute little spy stuff, she'd said, flipping her perfect hair. But real success takes visibility. That phrase stuck with me. Visibility. Victoria didn't just want to succeed, she wanted to be seen. I, on the other hand, wanted to understand things. Why systems broke, how patterns formed, what hid beneath the surface. In 12th grade, I joined a summer coding program through a state grant. There, I met a retired Army cyber specialist who told me, "You've got the kind of brain that protects nations." It was the first time anyone saw something valuable in me. So when I told my family I was enlisting after graduation, cyber intelligence track, they reacted like I'd said I was joining a circus. Claire wrinkled her nose. The military? Really? Dad blinked. Couldn't you do something safer? And Victoria, home from college, laughed from across the room. You? In the army? What are you going to do, encrypt a lunch menu? That night, I packed in silence. I didn't know it then, but their dismissal would become the fuel I needed. Every sneer, every shrug, every laugh. They built the fire. I just had to decide what I'd burn down with it. Basic training nearly broke me. The 5 a.m. wake-ups, the drills that left my legs shaking, the commanders barking in my face like I was made of steel, not skin. But I didn't quit. I wasn't the fastest. I wasn't the strongest. But I had something none of them could see. A reason. Every time I thought about giving up, I pictured Claire's tight smile, Victoria's laugh, Dad's blank stare. I let their voices echo in my head, spurring me forward. Charlotte can't handle the real world. She's too soft for pressure. She'll come home within a month. Instead, I rose. Within a year, I was transferred into cyber operations, deep dive pattern recognition, behavioral threat mapping, digital forensics. Not glamorous, not visible, but critical. And I was good at it. My CO once told me, "Morgan, you spot the flaw before the system knows it's breaking. That's rare." I moved up fast. Missions came and went. None I could talk about. Firewalls I broke through, encrypted chatter I decrypted, cyber attacks I dismantled before they ever touched American soil. I saved lives without ever being seen. But back home, my name was still mud. Victoria's World was a magazine cover. She married Blake Monroe, a luxury real estate developer. Together, they built a brand. She designed homes for celebrities. He built them. They were the power couple of Austin. Their wedding made local headlines. 500 guests, champagne wall, fireworks finale. I showed up alone, in my dress uniform. Claire winced when she saw me. "Couldn't you wear something softer, dear?" Dad pulled me aside. "This isn't a military event, Charlotte. Don't make it about you." Victoria didn't say a word, but she smirked. That night, I watched them all toast her with vintage wine while I stood near the back, sipping water. When someone asked what I did in the Army, I said data analysis, and they nodded politely before turning to ask about the bridal suite's thread count. Years passed. My job grew heavier. My security clearance went higher. I led ops that never saw the light of day. We prevented chaos by seconds. And every time I returned for a family holiday, I was still just Charlotte, the one who never quite caught the spotlight, the one who clicked keys for the government, the one who followed orders instead of giving them. But they didn't know. I'd been giving orders for years, and they were about to learn just what kind of storm I'd been commanding all along. I didn't want to go to the anniversary party. It had been 6 weeks since Operation Mirror Veil ended, 10 months of non-stop threat assessments, compromised networks, and one near-catastrophic breach. I was running on caffeine and sheer will. But then came the promotion. Major. I didn't tell the family. I knew what I'd hear. "That's nice, Charlotte. Sounds important, I guess. Victoria just got featured on Design Digest, though." Still, something in me, maybe stubbornness, maybe hope, packed a small bag and booked a rental car. "You're going?" Maya asked, raising an eyebrow as she sipped her coffee in the base lounge. "I shouldn't," I muttered. "But if I don't go, They win. They already think they won, she said. You just don't know yet that you don't need to play. She wasn't wrong. But I still went. Victoria's mansion towered over the other homes in the Austin Hills, white stone and steel, trimmed hedges shaped like swans. I pulled into the narrow space between my dad's Audi and some influencer's Tesla, my modest rental looking like an afterthought. I grabbed a bottle of mid-range red and my overnight bag, then stepped into enemy territory. Victoria opened the door, flawless as always. Her dress clung in all the right places, makeup airbrushed to perfection. "Charlotte?" she said, her voice sugary smooth. Her eyes flicked down to my plain slacks and tucked blouse. "Still keeping it." Understated. "Good to see you too," I replied dryly. "Brian?" she called over her shoulder. "Charlotte's here." Brian Monroe strolled in with a blazer too tight for his shoulders and a grin that didn't reach his eyes. "Hey, Char," he said, using the nickname I hated. "Still fighting the digital bad guys?" "Still managing overpriced properties?" I shot back. He chuckled like I was joking. Victoria led me upstairs. Guest room's the small one, down the hall. The suite's for Uncle Dean and Aunt Margaret, of course. Of course. I dropped my bag on the twin bed and stared into the mirror. Eyes tired, jaw tight. My rank said major. My family still saw assistant to the assistant. I exhaled slowly, squared my shoulders, and went back downstairs. I had no idea this night, this carefully staged performance, was about to shatter under the weight of one unexpected arrival. The party was already in full swing by the time I descended the staircase. Soft jazz floated through hidden speakers. Guests in designer cocktail dresses and tailored suits sipped champagne from crystal flutes. Every surface gleamed like it had been scrubbed by angels. Victoria didn't miss a detail. She floated from group to group like a practiced MC, flashing her signature smile and tossing her highlighted hair. Dad and Claire followed her around like satellites, beaming at her stories, nodding at every exaggerated success. I hovered near the edge of the foyer, clutching a glass of sparkling water. "Charlotte!" Uncle Dean boomed, clapping me on the back so hard I nearly spilled it. "Still playing war games on a laptop, huh?" "Something like that," I said, forcing a smile. Aunt Margaret chimed in with a sympathetic tilt of her head. "It's wonderful that you're still serving. That must be rewarding in its own way." I didn't answer. I just smiled and retreated toward the kitchen, needing air that didn't reek of perfume and polite condescension. Victoria found me there, arranging hors d'oeuvres on a gold-trimmed tray. She handed me a vase of roses. "Can you fix these? Not too crowded? You have an eye for symmetry, right?" She didn't wait for an answer. In the dining room, place cards lined a long polished table. Victoria and Brian at the head, Claire and Dad nearby. I was sandwiched between Uncle Dean and some cousin's fiancé who only wanted to talk about NFTs. Dinner was extravagant. Roasted duck, truffle risotto, and a dessert that looked too pretty to eat. And yet, I barely tasted any of it. The conversation was a well-rehearsed performance. Victoria led it like a conductor, highlighting Brian's latest resort, Claire's book club, Dad's golf game, and Emma's ballet recital. Not a single question about me. I didn't expect one. But when I finally found a sliver of silence and said, "I got promoted last week," the table barely paused. Victoria chuckled. "Oh? More classified desk stuff?" A few guests smiled politely. Aunt Margaret nodded. "That's nice, dear." "It's actually strategic threat analysis," I replied. "For national infrastructure protection." Brian raised an eyebrow. "Sounds stressful. Not sure I could stare at code all day." "I don't stare," I said evenly. "I lead a team." Victoria leaned forward, her tone syrupy. "Well, not everyone can handle the pressure of being front-facing. Some people are more background." The words sliced sharper than she realized. I gripped my fork, the silver biting into my palm. But I didn't speak. I didn't need to. Because someone else, someone unexpected, was already on their way to do it for me. The wine glasses clinked softly as Victoria rose once more, the candlelight dancing on the sequins of her dress. "To Mom and Dad," she said with practiced grace, "for 40 beautiful years, and for the legacy they've built through this family. Brian's firm just opened a new tower in downtown Austin. Emma's recital was featured in a local magazine, and my design firm just signed our biggest client yet. A political campaign, major media exposure." The table burst into polite applause. She didn't even glance at me, not once. I sipped my water, the knot in my stomach twisting tighter. I had led a classified cyber operation just 3 weeks ago that had dismantled a major international ransomware ring targeting hospitals. And here I was, clapping for a campaign banner layout. The moment she sat down, I leaned forward. "I was promoted," I said clearly. "Major U.S. Cyber Command." Uncle Dean turned. "That's nice. Real work now, huh?" Victoria laughed. "She analyzes patterns in data, Dean, probably predicting how many times I blink at a press event." I opened my mouth, but before I could speak, the doorbell rang. Everyone paused. Victoria frowned. "I told the valet no interruptions after 8. Brian stood. "I'll handle it." A hum of conversation resumed, but it was shaky. Victoria began another story, something about redesigning a celebrity's Palm Springs getaway. Then Brian's voice echoed from the hallway. Victoria? It's for Charlotte." The room turned. Every head, every pair of eyes. I was as confused as they were. And then, he appeared. Lieutenant Elijah Blake, my nephew, 25, dressed in full Air Force uniform, ribbons gleaming under the foyer light. His boots clicked against the hardwood as he stepped into the room, posture perfect, cap under his arm. The air changed. Chatter died. Forks froze midair. He walked straight toward me, eyes locked, and then snapped a salute, sharp, crisp, unshakable. "Major Morgan, United States Cyber Intelligence Command," he said, voice loud, clear, and formal. "I was ordered to deliver an urgent directive from Colonel Reyes." The room was frozen in silence. Victoria's glass hovered midair. Claire stared like the ceiling had fallen. I stood slowly, years of discipline snapping into place. "Lieutenant Blake," I said, matching his tone. "Unexpected, but understood." He nodded once, then turned back to the room. "For those unaware, Major Morgan led Operation Mirrorveil last quarter. Her work protected over a dozen military installations from cyber compromise, including my own squadron's communication system. Her actions saved lives. A beat passed, then another. Claire's lips parted, but no sound came out. Uncle Dean dropped his fork. Brian stared at the tablecloth like it had betrayed him. Victoria, silent, eyes wide, face pale. Elijah turned back to me. "Permission to brief privately, ma'am." "Granted," I said calmly. And just like that, the room, the entire family dynamic, shifted beneath their feet, because the girl they used to mock had just been saluted in their dining room. The next morning, I was back at my desk on base. Gray walls, fluorescent lights, a stack of encrypted drives waiting for review. It wasn't glamorous, but it was home. My coffee sat cooling beside a photo of me and Maya Chen from last year's joint training exercise, our uniforms smeared with dirt, but our smiles unshakable. My inbox was flooded. Debriefs, updates. One message from Colonel Reyes marked high priority. But just as I opened it, a knock came at the door. "Ma'am?" my assistant said, poking her head in. "There's a civilian at the visitor gate asking for you." I looked up. "Name?" "Victoria Blake. Says it's urgent." I froze. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. She was supposed to be back at her office, prepping for her next celebrity installation. Not here. I stood slowly, smoothing my uniform. "Tell security I'll meet her at the conference suite. No classified areas." As I made my way across the courtyard, wind tugged gently at the edges of my jacket. It was quiet, save for the drone of aircraft overhead. Victoria looked entirely out of place in the stark visitor lounge, perched on a plastic chair in a cream designer coat, heels too tall for the floor's shine. She stood as I entered. Charlotte, she said, then caught herself. I mean, Major Morgan. I raised an eyebrow. Charlotte's fine. She followed me into a small conference room, bare walls, one table, two chairs. No cameras, no audience. She sat, slower than usual, as if her confidence weighed more than she could carry. I took a personal day, she said quietly. Drove straight here. I folded my arms. Why? Victoria's fingers played nervously with her wedding ring. Last night, when Elijah... She swallowed. I didn't know. Any of it. About your work? What you've done? I didn't respond. I wanted her to say it without prompting. She looked up, eyes wet but steady. I've spent so many years needing to be the center of everything, the most successful, the most praised, and I made you feel small to keep myself there. She took a breath. I was wrong, Charlotte, about you, about all of it. I'm sorry. I blinked. Of all the speeches she'd ever rehearsed, this was the first one that felt real. You mocked my career for over a decade, I said evenly. You called me invisible, even when I was saving lives. I know, she whispered, and it's killing me now. I studied her. This wasn't a performance. This was my sister without the stage lights. I'm not ready to pretend it didn't happen, I said. But I hear you. She nodded slowly. Accepting it. And for the first time in our lives, she followed my lead. Later that evening, I met Maya at a bar just outside base. The floors were sticky, the booths were ripped, and the jukebox only played country songs. But it was our place. Safe. Familiar. Maya slid into the booth, beer in hand. So, she said, grinning, did I hear right? Your nephew went full Top Gun in the middle of Victoria's dinner party? I laughed for the first time in days. He walked in, saluted me, and called me Major Morgan in front of 30 guests with champagne in their hands. Maya raised her bottle. To divine timing, we clinked. As the buzz of conversation filled the air around us, I felt something settle in me. Not pride, not victory, something deeper. Like a weight I didn't know I'd been carrying had finally lifted. I still don't know if I forgive her, I admitted. But she came to the base. That meant something. She came into your world, Maya said. That's a start. The next morning, I returned to the hum of servers and scrolling code. Operation Helix Mirror was escalating. My team needed a lead. Patterns were shifting, threats evolving. There wasn't time to dwell in emotion, but on my desk sat a new photo, me and Elijah, sitting across from each other at a coffee shop, out of uniform. I was smiling, really smiling for once. His note tucked behind it read, "To the one who saw before others could. Keep being a badass. Lieutenant Blake." I set it beside the older photo of me and Maya, dirt-smeared and laughing. That was my family, not the one obsessed with headlines and curated perfection, but the one that had my back when it mattered. 2 days later, Dad called. His voice was unsteady. Your stepmother won't stop talking about you at her book club, he said, half laughing, half confused. Says you're some kind of cyber warrior. I let the silence stretch. I didn't know, Charlotte, he added. What you really do, what you carry. It's not for show, I said quietly. It's for purpose. He paused. You've made this family proud. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Victoria texted again that week. A simple message. Dinner? Just us. My treat. I didn't answer. Not yet. Because I wasn't chasing invitations anymore. Not when I had respect. Real respect. From my team. From the people I protected. From a pilot who walked into a room full of dismissive smiles and called me Major in front of them all. And from myself. They'd always seen me as the shadow. But now, I was the signal.